So, take, I think this is number 9. HMS Nelson, 1876. Now, to be a long one. I originally 20 minutes, and usually turn into about 40 minutes, but this one, I doubt it is going to be a long one. Why? Because the points that I need to make have already to an extent been covered in other videos. Unprotected, protected, and armoured cruisers on this channel, and I already went through quite a lot of things to do with the Nelson class and their successor, the Shannon. The thing is, there's still stuff I want to say about this ship and why it's a key ship. The Royal Navy built HMS Shannon a year before HMS Nelson. HMS Nelson by John Elder and company, and they take their building her. Elder and Co. and I think that was John Elder. Then they became Elder. So when they were building her, they were Elder and Company. Her sister Northampton is built by Napier and Sons, Robert Napier and Sons. Both ships are built in Govan, Glasgow, and well, let's be honest, Nelson takes a lot longer to be built than Northampton. She will spend most of her career on the Australia station, where she will have George Tryon and Henry Fairfax as her commander-in-chiefs. So fairly senior officers. Why does HMS Nelson deserve to be in this? Because they are a realization point. You see, the Royal Navy is looking for a flagship. They are experimenting with light battleships, or whatever you want to call it. I love her dearly, so frankly, I'll let her be, but it's whatever you want to call it. But in the 1870s, then they've looked at it and gone, well, if we just did that and that, extended a bit, 2,000 tons, just a little over 2,000 versus Shannon, they could be a very good flagship. Good flagships. Now, I think it's worth pointing out that, like other ships I've talked about in this video series, they do have some interesting engineering going on there. Theoretically, I should be talking about Northampton, because she actually had adjustable volume steam cylinders for her engines to allow them to optimize the production depending on demand, to optimize their ability to get the maximum amount of power out of the minimum of steam. However, that wonderfully advanced system really didn't work that well. Whilst Nelson gets 14.1 trials, I think, Northampton only 13.17 knots. So just under. So they were supposed to be 14, 2 engines and 2 shafts, so that they were along their butt being on distant stations. Nelson gets the North American West Indies station, and Nelson. Let's be honest, Northampton certainly is finished earlier. It's completed in service in 1878. Nelson takes to 1880. They both start in 1874. Northampton even costs more. There are some interesting figures going around there for that. But, yeah. Northampton probably I love these ships. Come on, they're gorgeous. And thank you to everyone who supports me in this channel. That's I think the phrase which I'm gonna go with, because the more I talk with, I don't know whether I am a true academic anymore. I still teach universities. I still apply for academic posts. I still write books to academic standards, and I'm working on those at the moment, and all sorts of things, but I'm not sure whether I'm a true academic anymore, because I don't especially look at the grant system in the same way. Now grants are a nice thing to get if I can get them to fund research. But if I don't get them, I'm not going to not do the research. I'll just do it at a slower pace, and I'm not as restricted by their rules. I'm not going to apply for grants which come with so many strings that I can only bark after I've wagged my tail to ask permission. Which, yes, not all of academia has such things, and honestly, the more senior you are in academia, the less such things seem to be applied to you. But yeah, thanks to you, thanks to your support, the patrons, the support, people who subscribe to the channel, the people who have joined the channel as members, all the other things like that. Yeah, that makes it possible. Thank you. I'll restart this slide just so. HMS Nelson. Look at this ship. If it looks like anything similar I discussed on this channel, have a look at HMS Warrior. You will notice that she is also a central battery ironclad. Now, okay, this is not an ironclad per se, but it's still a central battery ship. She is designed around maximizing broadside, but also still having forward and aft firing weapons. She's also designed around stability, around the ability to move. She's a very, very solidly designed. Everything is about resilience. Everything is about giving the ship the maximum chance of surviving not only the fight she's in, but also surviving the sea she's going to be in. Because you have to remember, you fight an enemy every now and again. You fight the sea every day. It's kind of like when you're designing a ship, and if it's called a warship, your natural tendency is to want to cram all the weapons you can into it. But the trouble is, a warship needs to be as good at deterrence as it is at... It needs to be good at conflict. Wow. Capacity. There was a discussion I had a long time ago about warship. Is people often going, well, you need them to fight wars. Well, they need to do a lot more in peacetime to justify their procurement. And then they went, well, why can't you have two ships then? One which does all the peacetime roles and one which does the wartime roles. And I go, well, in a standard tertiary system, what you'll do is you'll end up with two of the warships. Because, well, we don't need them right now. We don't need them right now. Tell them if we need them. We don't need them right now. And so you end up with one or two ships which can fight wars, and a whole load of ships which are probably just about capable of doing what they're supposed to be doing, but have all sorts of rules where they can't go into certain circumstances. They will probably have been made as some form of public-private partnership. So they will have all sorts of, for a civilian workforce, not a naval workforce. And the moment a war happens, and the thing is, everything. You are the chief warfighter, you are the chief payment, you are the chief logistics. You are your crew, as well as being the flagship and having to be good at their jobs on the flagship, are also going to support the staff of the admiral. Because the admiral will never have enough, especially in this period. Because the Royal Navy is just about getting over that for many years they had an informal staff going on. Really function that into their expansion of staffs at this point. The fact is that there are still wives, daughters, and nieces coming to sea with them, with captains and with admirals, and they will bonus staff managing these days. You need to have a social secretary. You need to be able to organize and bring all these people together when they're having a meeting. You need to be a lot of correspondence. All these things which quite often, especially in the Age of Sail, senior officers would rely on their familial connections in an unpaid capacity. Yes, informal staff work. It's always fun to look into. But no, when you've got in Australia, she's used by Trion, she's used by Fairfax, Trion and Fairfax to as a centerpiece to make the case a stronger squadron, a better squadron of ships, a Australia squadron, not a different colonies, different ships. Especially with the scares about Russia. This ship, therefore, is in many ways the cradle of the Australian Navy, because it was her and her capacities and capabilities that Trion and Fairfax were able to make the case they need to make. Squadron, and later on led to the forming of the Royal Australian Navy. As you can see, it's designed for stability. This picture, by the way, is of them loading guns in Northampton, but it would be much the same process. Lock and tackle, human power, everything to get everything. 10-inch guns, rifled muzzle loading guns, 8 9-inch rifle muzzle loading guns, 6 20-pounder guns, 2 3-cylinder inverted compacts that each drove their own shaft. 280 feet, that's 85 meters. Beam draft 7.8 meters. And an armor belt of between 6 and if we go back to this drawing, you can where 10-inch, 10-inch, 9-inch, 20-pounders up on upper deck. In reality, She is a large armoured cruiser. Guns. If you told any of the large frigate captains of the 1800s, when I say 1800s, I mean 1800 to 1810, that equivalent of their ships, large frigate, is going to be armed with just 18 guns. No, we have 40 guns. Because let's be honest, a 10-inch or a 9-inch gun fires something a bit heavier. A bit heavier. For example, again, the 10-inch fires around with 410 pounds. That's 881.4 or 180 sort of range, depending on whether it's a Palliser, a common, or a shrapnel shell. And if you think about that, from the point of view of if you're on the receiving end of it in a wooden warship in the 1800, well, you wouldn't really like that. Admittedly, I have to be an armor-piercing shot is not necessarily what we would call armor-piercing by today's standards, but it worked in 1867. It's updated a bit by the time we get to the 1870s, 1880s, so it worked. Which is designed long-range operation ship, a vessel which is going to be to the Royal Navy to command and lead squadron, and deal with the likely contingencies which are going to come up. Flagship of a distant station it's a contingency vessel. It's problems that will come up, and there will be problems. It's often forgotten in today's modern we have to communicate anywhere and anywhere so quickly and instantly, and I love that. I have friends in Australia, I have friends in Canada, I can communicate with people around the world very quickly. But these little devices which we now have, they're a luxury of the modern world. Not even governments really had the ability to instantly communicate with the rest of the world. Yes, you had the telegraph system being implemented at this point, but those cables still working, B, there being no interruption, and C, telegraph is not communication, is not exactly long-form content. It's like being able to communicate with the rest of the world, but you're having to run problems on the other side of the world, which are complex situations, by tweets, and you're not even allowed to really thread tweets. You have to send a tweet, wait for their response, and then respond again. All time spent discussing it before you send, and you have to messages trying to correct a misunderstanding from an earlier message because the text was not as clear as you thought it was. It's fun. So these ships really are important, and selecting them as a flagship role shows a growing status of the cruiser. It's the raw part. The ships that align from the whole Age of Sail scenario. What do we pick for our flagship? Do we go with a second-class battleship? Deploying the ship of the line equivalent to a first or second-class battleship is actually far easier and far more sustainable than necessarily to complete a battleship. Major global power, even for a power which is used to deploying ships and things around the world, deploying to do very complicated missions for a long period of time, and sustaining them there is a complicated and do you really want the expensive, most powerful ship all that way there? Especially out there, that means that whilst it probably so is HMS Nelson. And HMS Nelson is not your strongest ship. And if something stronger than her does turn up, that's why you have a squadron out. You hope they buy long enough time for you to send some. And that's what you do. That is what you do. So, what have we got coming up in the rest of this week? Well, this comes out on, I think it's the 13th of September. So what have we got coming up? Ooh. Well, yesterday was Holzendorf. It's interesting. Good history. Next week, it's building the fleets of Actium. And hopefully all the Rome books. This is Carthage at War. He's immediately picking the wrong one. There we go. That have arrived recently. Especially this one. Hellenistic Naval Warfare and Warships. Do. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this a question, and it seems appropriate to finish it with a question, but it's working out what question, because I could go incredibly specific about HMS Nelson and her value, or HMS Northampton and her value. But I thought I'd do something else. I thought I'd ask you a question about the value of ships. I'd like you to give it a lot of thought. I'd like you to write of space to engine within a hull of a warship, space to weapons within a warship, to all the command and support systems you need in a warship, space to hell systems you need in a warship. Now that usually what you use to describe things like accommodation, food, mess areas, that sort of thing. Towards peacetime capabilities and capacities, the contingencies. Well, I'd love to hear what your idea for those ratios of space within a hull. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and hope you enjoyed. It was a little over 20 minutes, but pretty much.